Hello, YouTube land. This is Michael Singar of the 28mm Sci-fi Wargaming show. And today I'm going to talk about the subject of skirmish games and basically why this is the best gateway and the most cost-efficient way to get into the hobby. After watching a video from another YouTube producer, he talked mainly about very expensive games that are popular and do have a lot of players, but the costs are kind of prohibitive as far as getting into the hobby. And I want to let all the new people know, or people that are thinking about doing sci-fi, that you can do this a lot cheaper and have the same amount of fun. And basically, let's talk about what a skirmish game is and how I classify it. Basically, a skirmish game to me is a game where you use a squad to 3 or 4 squads. So it's going to entail anywhere from 5 up to 20, maybe 30 figures total. And that is pretty good when you consider a major fantasy war game or a major battle game like Warpath or Warhammer. Warhammer, you're going to spend, I guess like $600, the guy said, to get into the hobby. I don't play Warhammer anymore because I've found a lot better rule systems. And I'll touch on what rule systems are really spectacular. So, another bigger battle game is Warpath, and I think you could probably do a decent sized Warpath army for roughly about $300. So if you're looking to command lots and lots of sci-fi troops, I think that is probably one of the best ways to go. There is Hordes and War Machine, and that's kind of got a cyberpunk, not so much a cyberpunk, steampunk type flavor. I like hard fantasy as a genre, so that doesn't really appeal to me. I never played Hordes or War Machine. But so when it comes to getting into the hobby, you want to pick the right game and you want to find the right flavor and stuff like that. So the big advantage to skirmish games is you're going to spend a lot less money on miniatures if you pick the right game. One game that I am trying out is Mercs, but when I saw the price of the actual combat teams for $80, for my hobby dollar, I can buy it. If I choose my models right, I can buy a really nice, larger army for $80 from suppliers like Scotia Grendel, EM4 Miniatures, Moonraker Miniatures, and $80 I could buy something like that Warlord game, the Antares, Beyond the Gates of Antares. All right, that's and I almost consider that game a skirmish game because basically you need 3 or 4 squads. The squads are small. It's like 5 guys a squad, maybe 8 total. And it's got a great background and a great line of miniatures, and there's a lot of different forces that you can take. Another good company that has a really great skirmish game would be Mantic, and there's Deadzone. So the big difference is We have a lot less models to paint, a lot less models to pay for. And to tell you the truth, the games are just as fun, if not funner. I think in a skirmish setting, you can do a lot more better simulations of different tactics, battle scenarios, and things like that. So, all in all, I think it's probably the best way for someone to get into the sci-fi wargaming hobby. I would stay away from Games Workshop as far as like Warhammer because you're gonna want to spend $2,000-3,000 to get a decent competitive army, and that's just ridiculous. You can play a lot of different genres. Speaking of genres, let's cover what type of genres there are. So we'll start with hard sci-fi, and we're gonna go with the game that I'm showing right now. That's War. That's a skirmish level game that can be escalated into a big battle game. Now, a nice thing about Vor is basically they have a force creator in the back where you can pretty much think of any concept of any type of army. If you can find the miniatures for it, you can point it out, you can play it, and the background fluff supports it. Now, I know not everybody wants to do the whole creation thing, so this game has got 5 or 6 factions too that you can still get the miniatures from Ral Partha European website, and the prices are still pretty decent. They're right at about the 1990 level for paying for stuff. Now that's one thing. There's like Malifaux, that's super expensive. You know, honestly, you can pay as cheaply as 89 cents a figure, and I don't like to pay anything more than $6 for a single miniature for a skirmish game. So that's the whole cost effective thing. So back to genres. I'm sorry about meandering on the topic. Beyond the Gates of Atreides is another hard science fiction one. There's a free rule set that I talk about in my videos called No Limits Sci-fi Rules. Those rules are free on the net. You just Google it. You can create any force. For a lot of the more popular miniature ranges, somebody's already written a force somewhere on the web. You can usually find it at the No Limits site. So if you don't want to spend the time creating a force, you can use somebody else's work. They do have a model calculator on their website that's got all the rules in it, which is really nice and convenient. So that's a really good option, and that's another one that you can start off at a skirmish level and scale up. And you can go as high tech level as you want or as low tech level as you want. If you want to do crazy alien monsters, Vor and No Limits lets you do that. So if you have a planet of dinosaur men that carry lightsabers and shoot black powdered weapons, you can do it. You can do anything you want. So that's a good option. Also, for hard science fiction, there's Mercs, but that is cost prohibitive because it's $80 for 8 guys. Now for another sci-fi genre, what I recommend, for basically it's the apocalypse kind of type of game. I would go with This Is Not a Test. That's a very good one. Waste Man. That's another good one. Necromunda, made by Games Workshop. Cost of buying it's kind of high, but it's a decent enough game. And you can also use No Limits for that. They have like a Mad Max type of supplement that's free that you can find on the web. Another genre, um, that's fantasy. There's no quarters, which is the equivalent to the No Limits sci-fi rules, but for fantasy, you can do skirmish games. My favorite fantasy skirmish game is Frostgrave. Um, you're never gonna have more than 10 guys in your squad, and then and two of those are your wizard and your sorcerer and your apprentice. So that's a low model count with models that are easily defined. You can use Bones Reaper miniature models. They go for like $3 a crack. So that's totally a great game to get in. The only deal with that is that they you need to build a lot of terrain or buy terrain, and that's basically the cost can go super high to super low. It depends how much hobby and craft work you want to do. If you live in major metropolitan areas like I do, I live in Chicago, and a lot of the game stores have terrain that you can use, so that might not be a worry. There's just a crap load of generic free rules on the net for any genre you could want to do. But let's get back to the fantasy thing. Um, Mordheim is kind of like Frostgrave with not as much magic. I think Frostgrave's better because I think the way the rounds are dictated is better. But a lot of people do like Mordheim. I played it; it's okay. Osprey Games has kobolds and cobblestones, which is another good game. Pretty much, I haven't been disappointed yet with an Osprey game. If you want to do ancients and medievals, they got a few skirmish level games that are like that. So you can also do that with no quarter and just have no monsters or races like that. Another skirmish thing is there's a lot of skirmish World War II games out there. Bold Action's probably the best one. That's in 28 millimeter, and these different skirmish games, some of them have vehicles, most of them have walkers and small vehicles like that or jet bikes, but you can bring tanks into them too. Just because there's vehicles there doesn't mean it's not a skirmish game. If you're controlling like squads of 3 guys and 5 guys and you've got like 3 or 4 squads, I still consider that skirmish warfare. It's not hundreds and hundreds of guys. So, back to World War II. So, bold action would be the way I would go. As far as that, there is tons of any era of past warfare, as far as like from Civil War on up. Well, even the Revolutionary Wars, the Napoleonics, all the historical, realistic type battle games. There's tons and tons of skirmish games. So, if you like the War of the Roses, if you look around, you will find a skirmish game that will accommodate that. Another genre. That's kind of like sci-fi and fantasy. I can't remember the name of the game now, but it's basically takes place underwater. It's absolutely beautiful. The miniatures are kind of high priced, but you buy 10 or 12 miniatures, you're pretty much done. You don't need to buy anything else. So that's another good one. Now you can do different scales too. 15 millimeter, Star Grunts 15 millimeter is a great game. Star Grunts 2 is a great sci-fi skirmish game, and there's tons and tons of models. 15 millimeter is always a pretty good deal. You're not going to spend $10 for one guy, which is a good thing, and there's vehicles involved and stuff like that. They're a little bit harder to paint, but they get done quicker because you got half the figure to paint. So there's just tons and tons of options as far as 15 millimeter is concerned. I've got most of my stuff is 28 millimeter, and then there's the Mech games. You know, you've got BattleTech. That's a great skirmish game. CAV by Reaper. There's another great one. Osprey has one. I think it's called Horizon Wars. That would be the way I would go as far as big stompy robot game. Not only is there mech support, he's got rules for airplanes, he's got rules for ground troops, he's got rules for ground vehicles and tanks. And honestly, that's another one of the best games to come out, and I don't understand why it's not as more popular. But I think that one, if you paint up the guys, have your friends play it, they'll get into it, and it's something that they'll want to play. You have to be careful not to get something that's too obscure because your buddies won't want to play it. More fluff and pretty pictures there are in the rulebook, the tendency that people like to play it a lot more. That stuff I don't care so much about. I do appreciate fluff. Another skirmish game from the past is Mech. And I'll be doing more on the channel about that. It's 28 millimeter. That's basically robots, Marines, and humans in power armor going up against aliens. Alien versus Predator is another good option for a skirmish game. You can play Warzone as a skirmish game. That's not as rewarding. That's basically, you start out like that, you're going to escalate and have 50, 60 troops and vehicle type army. But that's a very good game also. So you don't have to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars to do this hobby. I believe skirmish is pretty much the way to go. You know, if you can always escalate into a bigger army for a lot of these games. One game that I really want to draw special attention to is Deadzone. It's pretty nice. It plays on a small board. It's a 3-dimensional game where you got different levels to play and shoot in. You know, you're not going to put more than 20 guys on a table. Your average Deadzone force can be as small as 5 figures, roughly 8 to 12 figures total. And the nice thing about Mantic is you spend $60 and you get a good chunk of the faction in their starter kit. They have a 2-player box where it comes with 2 different forces, and you can build on that. And then they got the starter kit boosters where it's like, you know, a dozen miniatures, and you end up paying around $50, $60 for them. So, and the game is bloody as hell and exciting, very cinematic. There's a lot done on Deadzone right now. Later in the channel's history, I'm going to try to cover more of it, but I got some fish to fry before I do that. So basically, my point is, you know, look for games where you can pay under $8 for a figure. Pick a genre that you like. You know, it's a great way to try the hobby. You don't have to spend $200-300 to get into wargaming. If you do it right, for $200-300, you can play 5 or 6 different games. So that's my main point about this. And then there's games where you can start off small and escalate into bigger options. And then all in all, I think skirmish wargaming is probably my favorite aspect of the hobby. I do like big force games, but I tend to do a lot more skirmish games because it's just easier to find players, easier to teach people. It's not as intimidating, and basically, my days of painting huge forces for something like Kings of War or Warhammer, Age of Sigmar, or stuff like that, I'm not going to paint 30 elves or 30 skeletons just for one squad. I just don't have the patience for that anymore. So I think skirmish is that's another good reason about doing skirmish, because you'll be able to get your painting done a lot quicker, or get your modeling done a lot quicker, and there's a lot more room for conversion in skirmish. Skirmish players tend to accept new concepts and different things because there's always nice to add spice to the game. So I think skirmish games are the way to go, and that's why they're awesome, and they're a lot more affordable. So one of the things I would look for is games where the figures are game neutral, where you can pull different figures from different companies and ranges and play them in the game. That's always a big plus, and that also cuts down cost. You want to look for the genre that you want to play, and it's out there. You just got to look. If anybody's got any questions, if they want to play a certain age or genre, I've got a pretty good knowledge of these games. I'm doing all this off the top of my head, and I'd be happy to answer comments if you want to find a certain type of era. Osprey would be my first choice for rules. They make great books, good art, and solid rules. So cruise their line of different books. As far as like miniature companies, don't discount the older games. There was like Void. There's tons of figures you can buy. That you can get all their stuff from Scotia Grenell. All the Mech figures are still available. You can get those from Scotia Grenell. Moonraker Miniatures has all the old Future War Grenadier stuff, which just still stands up, and you'll be able to do almost all your sci-fi and Holocaust games off of there. They've got that pretty much covered, and Moonraker Ventures has got all their metal stuff. They got all the old Space Lords lines. So, basically, if you do a little bit of homework, you'll be able to build some really killer, cool-looking armies, and do it for a lot cheaper. One of the things I'm going to feature on the channel is when I start showing different costs and stuff like that, is I'm going to compare it to Games Workshop and keep a total of how much money I saved, and then when the time comes and I want to cash in those dollars saved, I'll show you what you can get by not going with an expensive company. So, all right, everybody, thank you for listening to this little discussion. I'm sorry I don't have a bunch of miniatures to show you. I just wanted to do this laying in bed, kind of talking to you and thinking about it, and the other guy's video inspired me, but I wanted to cover some things that he didn't. So I appreciate everybody watching. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned. My channel is going to have things that you don't normally see on everybody else's channel. So thank you, and may the dice be with you.